Hi, my name is Katie Hinds. I'm a clinician at the Center for Brain Health's Brain Performance Institute, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to supercharge your brain during a pandemic. Very hot topic right now. We are asked quite often how to keep your brain healthy and still perform at your highest level even during this challenging time. So our vision at the Center for Brain Health is to help you unlock your human potential through improved brain health and performance. And all of that stems from the concept of neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change for better or worse depending on how you use it. So what we want to help people do is leverage that neuroplasticity to help their brain perform better and even maintain over the lifespan. This is not meant to be a negative picture. It's meant to be hopefully empowering. We have tools that we will give you throughout these talks that are meant to help you maintain that performance and possibly even improve your brain's performance as you age. But the main thing is we don't want you to become stagnant so that you really are losing your brain's performance as you age, instead of leveraging that neuroplasticity to continue to improve, continue to challenge your brain, and continue to adopt brain healthy habits that are going to keep your brain healthy. So all we challenge you to do is make small incremental change every day. If you can just push your brain health forward a little bit every day, you're going to get in this cycle of continuous improvement so that you're not stagnant and you're constantly looking for new ways to challenge your brain and keep it healthy. And the few tips I'm going to give you today are meant to help you do that. Okay, so we base all of our research and our tips and tools and strategies on how to improve the brain's frontal networks. The reason why we focus on the frontal networks is because they're really the CEO of your brain. They are in charge of so many important functions that help you feel healthy cognitively and help you perform at a high level. As you can see with the things listed on the left, your frontal networks mediate these things. It's hard to think of yourself as being healthy, successful, happy with your brain health if you're not doing these things well, if you're not being able to complex problem solve, if you're not thinking innovatively every day, if you're not being able to be social and feel comfortable in those social settings. Having good mental flexibility is also a big one. Having good judgment, decision making, and even regulating your stress and your emotions. So the things that we're going to talk about today are meant to help you get the most out of your frontal networks and continue to use your frontal networks, because as we age, typically our frontal networks are the first to decline. So we want to really ramp up those frontal networks, keep that performance going, maintain it, and like I said, hopefully maybe even improve it as we age. Okay, so I'm going to minimize myself, but all I want you guys to do real quickly is read through this. All right, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through this, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions afterwards. All right, so now I want you to try to think of one sentence to explain that entire paragraph. Is that challenging? Is it difficult to think of how to pare that down to one sentence? That might have felt overwhelming, confusing, and honestly, that was a little bit on purpose because this is dense with complex information. It's overwhelming. It's really all one large run-on sentence, but we show you this to prove a point that in order to focus And to really perform cognitively, you have to filter. So now I want you to read through this. I'll minimize myself really quickly. Much more simple, right? Much easier to get to that bottom line of this information. Now, we're not just talking about information. I'm not just saying, oh, get rid of some extra words or excess information so that you can get down to the meat of what you're reading. I'm also talking about your day. How can you minimize all of the distractions? How can you minimize the excess information so that you can really focus on what's important to you? And that's the key of the 3 tips I'm going to give you today. How to filter better so that you can focus, because that is vital for your cognitive performance. Okay, so all of that to say that really every day you have a set amount of mental energy. It is not endless. So every single day you wake up, you have this kind of battery pack of mental energy that you can use, that you have at your disposal to use. Now, how you decide to dedicate that mental energy is completely up to you. That's something that we like to encourage people with, is that you have control over how you're calibrating your mental energy every day. So the decisions you make, the tasks you decide to do, the information you take in is expending your mental energy. So what do you want to expend your mental energy on? It's very important to think about that so you can start filtering out the things that might not be as important or as imperative for you to get done. Okay, so like I said, we really want to focus on how to calibrate that mental energy, which requires you to assess it, set goals, set the tasks that you want to do that day, and adjust it based on the cognitive energy that task or situation requires. This also will help you build stress resilience, because you won't be expending all of your mental energy to where you don't have that mental energy if it is a stressful time, or maybe you have something come up that's really going to challenge that cognitive your cognitive thinking, and you don't have the mental energy to draw from in order to really think deeply about that situation or task. It also helps you grant access to your frontal networks, which is, like I said, required for higher level thinking, innovation. If you're constantly thinking about things on a surface level because you've expended too much of that cognitive energy on things that might not matter as much, then you can't access those frontal networks. You need that cognitive energy so that you can draw from the frontal networks and utilize those to really perform at a high level. Okay, so this is something that I think everyone is thinking about right now, and it is stress. So there are some stressors in our life that are environmental that we don't have much control over. However, we have some stressors that we experience every day that are more cognitive that we do have some control over. So these that I'm going to talk about are more of those cognitive stressors, because I know that some of the environmental stressors you aren't going to be able to change. So I'm going to encourage you, when you can, to alter some of these cognitive stressors or just decrease them even by a small margin. So as you go through your day, just as I was mentioning with your calibration of mental energy, you have things that you do that drain your battery. Some things drain your battery more than others. But everything you do, everything that requires your brain power does drain that battery over the course of the day. But we don't want to add those cognitive stressors on top, because that's going to deplete your mental energy even quicker. So things like information overload, being saturated with tasks, even just the feeling of being unproductive can be a cognitive stressor. Being deep thought deprived, so constantly staying on that surface level of thinking, not getting to dive deeply into information. Being overly detail focused, so not thinking big picture, not having the opportunity to do that or give yourself the space cognitively to do that, and just having a lack of flexibility, adaptability. That one I won't talk as much about today, but it's also very important for this time. You have to be able to think flexibly, see others' perspectives, and at least appreciate those, not to say that it has to change your mind, but just appreciating other perspectives can really downregulate that stress, so that you're not feeling as stressed just because someone has a different opinion than you or doesn't view a situation the same. This is another key point, that this is not all or nothing. So as I talk about these tips, I don't want you to think, oh, I have to be perfect at these in order to get the most out of my brain performance. Even if you can adopt some of these, even one of these as a healthy brain habit and just change your habits by this much, you're going to see a positive difference. So we encourage you to just take control over the habits that you do have some control of, which tend to be in that cognitive stress realm, so that you can be more resilient when times are hectic. So even when you're not stressed, we want to encourage you to try to use these strategies or tips so that you are more resilient when times are a little bit more hectic and you are stressed. And then, yeah, the kind of the why behind all of this is because if you do this, if you utilize some of these tips, you can increase your efficient and effective decision making, you can reduce your frustration and exhaustion, and you can just improve your resilience or response when the stressors are things that are outside of your control. Okay, so real quickly, I'm going to give you a moment to read through this. I'm also going to be reading some facts about sleep, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on both, and I'm going to minimize myself so you can see this. For centuries, physicians believed that sleep was a period of brain inactivity. Yet research over the last 60 years has shown us that the brain remains active during sleep. There is a progressive decrease in the activation or firing rate of most neurons throughout the brain as sleep progresses from wakefulness to non-REM sleep. Also, the patterns of neuron firing change from a seemingly random and variable activity pattern during wakefulness to a much more coordinated and synchronous pattern during non-REM sleep. In all mammals and many other animals, sleep can be defined in much the same way that we define sleep for humans. However, there are some notable differences among species. When humans sleep, the entire brain is involved. Dolphins and whales, on the other hand, need to maintain consciousness while they sleep, so they can occasionally surface to breathe. In these marine mammals, sleep occurs in only one hemisphere of their brain at a time, allowing for some degree of consciousness and vigilance to be maintained at all times. With regard to physiology, for the most part, many of those activities are reduced during sleep. For example, kidney function slows and the production of urine is decreased. However, some physiological processes may be maintained or even increased during sleep. For example, one of the greatest changes induced by sleep is an increase in the release of growth hormone. Certain physiological activities associated with digestion, cell repair, and growth are often greatest during sleep, suggesting that cell repair and growth may be an important function of sleep. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on what you just read, but also what I read. So first question, how many participants were in the study, the marijuana study that you read about? All right. What cues were used in the study? All right, now this is going to be based on what I read. What happens to neuronal activity during non-REM sleep? Why do whales have a different sleep pattern than humans? Okay, so you might have done really well with that. You might have felt, oh no, that was very overwhelming. I didn't perform very well. So I don't know if you guys know what I'm getting at here, but the brain cannot multitask. And that's what I was asking you to do. So we multitask consistently. A lot of times we do it all during our day. And that does take a toll on our brain's performance, but also our stress levels. So if you're constantly asking your brain to do 2 or more tasks that pursue separate goals at the same time, you're putting your brain under stress and you're performing at a lower level. If I would have given you these tasks separately, I bet you would have done much better and you probably wouldn't have felt so stressed. I don't know about you, but the first time I did this, I just couldn't believe how stressed my brain felt as I did this task. So what we want to encourage you to do, this is our first tip, is to single task. Now, we are not saying that this is going to always be possible. We want you guys to single task as much as you can, especially when it's practical and realistic for you. And a big part of this is we want you to focus your attention on one task at a time and be present in that task, or maybe it's a conversation. Maybe you have an important conversation with a loved one. We want you to kind of get rid of the distractions around you and other tasks that might be trying to steal your attention and focus on that conversation or that task at hand. You'll perform better and your stress levels will go down just because you're single focusing on a task instead of trying to do more than one task at a time. The The second tip, and this one goes kind of hand in hand with single tasking, is to reduce your distractions. This is extremely important, and it's important to be proactive about it. You're not going to naturally, as you start doing a task or as you start having a conversation, think, oh, maybe I should turn the TV off. Turn the TV off before you start having the conversation. Put your phone away before you start the task. If you can reduce those distractions, it's going to be much easier for your brain to stay focused on the task at hand instead of being tempted constantly to switch tasks and to try to pay attention to other things while you are doing a task or having a conversation or engaging with someone else. The other piece to this is that we kind of feel this, especially I think now, this need to be constantly connected and responsive to people. So check yourself on that a little bit. When do you actually need to be responsive and connected? And when could you put your phone away and focus on your family time and not worry so much about being responsive 24/7? It's hard to do that, but sometimes we just have to take a step back, ask ourselves when we need to be responsive, and then when we don't have to be, take kind of some of those distractions, put them away so you can truly focus on the time that you have and what you're doing in that moment. All right, the last tip, and something that's so important during this pandemic, is filtering information. More information is not always the best route. We want to encourage you to down-regulate the constant flow of information and ask yourself what kind of information you want to be pumping into your brain throughout the day. Maybe you don't want to be constantly reading negative information. Maybe you feel like that's stressing you out. Maybe you feel like that's raising your cortisol levels and increasing your stress. So how can you be more intentional and strategic about the information that you're bringing in and focusing on things that are going to keep you informed, but not maybe be all negative and stress you out? The other thing is that you need to take breaks during the day from technology and from that constant intake of the information. Take times where you don't have the news on, where you aren't on your phone, where you aren't maybe someone that talks to you wants to always talk to you about the pandemic or things that are going to stress you out. Maybe just down-regulate that a little bit and take time for yourself, step away from the constant intake of information so that you can down-regulate your stress and hopefully filter that information so that you can focus on what's really important in the information. Not saying to be unconnected and to be, to not know what's going on, but you can down-regulate some of that, filter some of it so that you can truly focus on what's important within the information. All right, so the 3 tips that I gave were single tasking, so limiting your multitasking, reducing distractions, and filtering information, making very strategic decisions on the type of information that you want to focus on during your day. If you can do these 3 things, even at a small margin, you're going to limit your cognitive stress and be able to get the most out of your brain's performance, even during this pandemic. Thank you so much. I am available for questions if you would like to email me. My email address is katie.hinds@utdallas.edu. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions.